everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We live in a Western world, especially in Toronto. We get exposed to many cultures, and Toronto is where the world meets. It's a beautiful city. However, when we meet all these different cultures, especially with the Eastern cultures, we have these perceptions. And these Eastern cultures, most of the times, including mine, are very male-dominated communities. So we start thinking, is everything that's practiced there, are they being forced on the women that are part of this community? So today we're going to be talking about a very controversial topic that a lot of people are afraid to talk about, I would say as well. Are the Muslim women forced to wear the hijab? So today we have Farheen Khan, who's a candidate for NDP Mississauga Centre for 2015, who has joined us today to talk about this topic. Farheen, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So Farheen, you come from a very patriotic family. Like your father, grand uncle, they were all part of the Toronto Police, and your sister was with the Canadian Armed Forces. And now you're running for Canadian politics, and congratulations. I mean,
Thank you so much.
So coming from a male-dominated South Asian community, like how is this working out for you, you going into a leadership role?
Well, you know what? It's been very interesting. Like many other communities, my community is very much questioning my priorities in life right now. A lot of them are saying, well, you should have a family, you should have children, why run in politics, particularly a male-dominated profession, right, for a lot of people. And you know what, I would just say to that, I do care about families, but, maybe my priority for families is more about trying to, introduce $15 a day childcare and making life more affordable for families so that they can actually live well, right? Yeah. But I mean, it's definitely something that I'm having to deal with, and I've spoken to a lot of other women politicians as well, and they've all gone through it. But I'm very proud that, with the NDP particularly, we have. Our mandate is to have 50% of all candidates running be women, right, in the elections, and our priority is always to put women first, which is fantastic. So I'm excited about that.
We're excited for you too as well, Farheen. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a blunt question.
Sure.
Are you forced to wear the hijab?
Absolutely not. The hijab is definitely a part of my identity. It's a part of who I am. It's my connection to my faith. It's a reminder for me, of what my accountability is to God. But that is my personal choice, and I've always chosen to wear it for my personal reasons.
Well, I can say that I'm not forced to wear the sari. I chose to wear it, so I understand what you mean by that. Sure. And can you tell me the difference between covering the head and covering the face? I think there's a lot of miscommunication among people regarding that. Right. So what is the difference between that?
Well, I mean, you know what, my personal belief is that, the covering your face is the niqab, the covering your head is called the hijab. Okay. I choose to wear the hijab, but it's a personal choice. Women choose to wear it. My concern, when you talk about controversy, I would just say to you that the government, particularly the Harper Conservatives, have no business dictating what a woman should or should not wear, period, right? Yeah. And so there's a lot of controversy, which really I don't think is very necessary, right? This is just another example of creating, divisive politics, right? And trying to create hate and fear against communities, which is really unacceptable.
So coming to that, with the Canadian laws, and I guess in the courts as well, there has been incidents where they're unable to identify the women when they're covered in the niqab, right? Is that correct? Yes. So what are your thoughts on that when they're saying that we're unable to carry on a case in the courts or do our job because of this cultural practice? How would you, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think that, going back to the women that I've met, particularly, and the women that I know, I mean, we've never, women are all very much accommodating to requests that are happening in courts. I mean, it's never been an issue, right? As long as they're being accommodated, they're fine. So I think it's really about ensuring that people have access to accommodations, right? But particularly, I mean, this goes back to this is what I was saying earlier, the Harper Conservatives are trying really hard to create these stereotypes, right? And trying to create a sense of fear, that, we can't see her face and all of this, right? But the reality is that, all women you know, including myself, are just as Canadian as anybody else is, right? So why are we now trying to create barriers for people and saying, well, you know, you can't wear this when you go here, or you can't wear that when you go there, right? Like, there's no need for the government to interject or intervene in that way. Just like, you know, we don't dictate whether a person wears any other form of, you know, clothing, right? Like, you know, we should not be, you know, when we talk about Canada and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, this is fundamentally what we're talking about, right? The freedom of expression, freedom of religion. These are things that we value as Canadians. And that's fundamentally what's being taken away from us today.
What is it, like a personal thing? Like, is it only family that's allowed to see your hair? Like, what is the reason behind it?
Everybody wears it for their own reasons.
Okay.
It is certainly, you know, many of us believe that it's our connection to God, right? Or it's our connection to our faith, and a reminder for that. I think for me as well, though, especially particularly post 9/11, I started to wear it much more. I really had to reflect on whether I was going to continue to wear it or not. Because for the first time in my life, I, you know, sure, I dealt with discrimination before, but first time in my life, I had to really think about the possibility of actually being physically at risk, right, for my life, for my well-being. And that really, you know, and you know, even when I made that decision post 9/11, I was still attacked, you know, in a building in broad daylight, and it was very Islamophobic. And, you know, a lot of people have gone through a lot of backlash as a result of 9/11. But the reality is that we continue to wear it because, you know, for me particularly, I want people to be able to understand that, you know, as a Muslim, I'm also a Canadian, right? I am a Canadian first and foremost, and I'm just like everybody else, right? Like, but if we don't use the opportunity to educate people, then we'll never be able to challenge the stereotypes that exist, right? Particularly in the media and in society.
Okay. Going into politics, and you know, Canada, we are a peaceful country, and we do claim to be a peaceful country until now. You know, there are parts in the world where women are discriminated to, you know, it happens in the Hindu community as well, and it happens in the Muslim community. Like, what are your thoughts of that, of, like, you know, showing skin and stuff like that? They have been victims of, like, violent crimes, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Around, like, the gender inequality?
Yes, yes.
So I definitely understand the fact that there is gender discrimination, and that clearly exists in Canada today as well. What's concerning, though, is that it's not just, you know, at a societal level. It's also very much coming from the current government, right? So when you look at, you know, violence against women, we know that as a fact, you know, statistics show 1 in 3 women will experience some form of violence in their lifetime in Canada, right? But yet the Harper Conservatives have voted against having a national violence against women action plan, right? So what does that mean, right? You're looking at missing in, you know, the 1,200 missing and murdered Indigenous women, right? And the fact that the government doesn't feel that their lives and an inquiry into their stories is a priority, right? These are just some examples of how we still have gender inequality. And then you've got, you know, conservative MPs, women, that are saying that the reason why there's a gender gap in wages is because women are choosing lower paying jobs, right? Like, you know, these are some examples of how gender inequality still exists in Canada, right? And that's very concerning. So
your take is that, you know, even though gender equality happens and it ends in violent crimes around the world, maybe, but here it's happening in a sort of hidden behind the scenes way that we don't get to see.
Sure, it's just basically it's much more systemic, right? Like, you'll see it much more systemically. I mean, it certainly exists in all our communities as well, right? Like I mentioned to you earlier, me being in politics is being questioned, right? Just because I'm a woman. But that goes across all communities, I would say, and this is just taking gender inequality to a whole new level where there's systemic inequality as well.
All right, thank you, Farheen, for that. So if you get elected, or, you know, you decide to stay with the community in some sort of way with us, how do you plan to change things for the minority women or the South Asian women that do not have the opportunities like you and I do at this point?
Well, I think that I would certainly want to encourage women to get into politics, to become more active. I mean, certainly being able to be women like you and I who are role models in the community, it'll inspire other women to follow in our footsteps, so to speak. I mean, I would certainly want to see more women involved in any way that they can be, right?
Yeah.
It's so important to be engaged, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about to the young girls that who feel like they're being pressured by culture and by the society to follow cultural traditions, but they don't really relate to?
I've always done things the hard way, so I would say to you, follow your heart. You know, just do what you feel is right. You know, we only live once, and you know, absolutely, you want to love your family and your culture and your community. But you also, I believe, we all have a purpose in life, and we need to aspire to live that purpose.
Thank you so much, Farheen, and thank you for joining us today. I know this was a tough topic for you to come here in front of camera and actually talk about this. So thank you for that.
Thank you
and
so
ladies
much.
and gentlemen, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. And you know, these are some things that we think in our head. As to, like, you know, people ask me, are you forced to wear a sari? And then just like that, there are women who are asked, you know, are you forced to wear the hijab? No, you know, sometimes, even though we come from a male-dominated community, sometimes these pieces of clothing, we chose to wear them because that is a sort of reminds of our childhood, or it's something tied to our culture. And we're glad that, you know, we live in a country that embraces all cultures, and we celebrate that. And Farheen Khan, if you want to connect with her, she is on Facebook, and she is the NDP candidate for Mississauga Centre for 2015. We wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
And if you want to give us a feedback or comment, you can reach me at ask@sumusathi.com or on my Facebook, Sumusathi. And until next time, this is Sumusathi from Mandra TV.